What if I told you people don't start respecting you when you explain yourself more? They start respecting you when you change nothing except your behavior. Most people try to change how others treat them by talking more, by explaining, defending, justifying, or proving their point louder, but psychology shows something very different. People don't change their behavior because you demand it. They change because your patterns shift quietly, consistently, and without announcements. In human relationships, silence, emotional steadiness, and subtle behavioral signals often communicate more powerfully than long explanations ever could. And today, we're going to break down 7 quiet habits backed by psychology that naturally change the way people treat you, not through conflict, not through arguments, but through clarity. Stay to the end because the last habit changes everything once you see it clearly. Let's break them down.
Habit 1. Reduce your instant availability. One of the fastest ways people shift how they treat you is when they sense that your time is no longer automatically accessible. In cognitive psychology, this connects to the scarcity perception effect. The human brain places higher value on anything that feels intentional, structured, or limited. When you respond instantly every time, when you constantly rearrange your schedule, when you're always available on demand, your presence becomes predictable instead of meaningful. But when you begin responding at your own pace, when you allow pauses before replying, when your schedule reflects your priorities, not just other people's requests, something subtle changes. People become more thoughtful in how they approach you, more careful about what they ask, more aware that your energy isn't an unlimited resource. This isn't coldness, it's not avoidance, it's self-regulated presence, one of the strongest quiet signals of self-respect. And in social dynamics, people almost always follow the tone you set. If your time suddenly felt valuable again, how differently would people approach you?
Habit 2. Speak less, observe more. Quiet people often appear more confident, not because they're withholding, but because their words come from internal stability, not emotional reactivity. In emotional intelligence research, this is linked to processing pauses, intentional moments where the brain evaluates before responding. People who practice this naturally feel grounded. When you speak less, you start noticing more. You notice who dominates conversations, who listens with intention, who asks real questions, and who projects assumptions onto you. These behaviors reveal more about relationships than anything spoken out loud. Silence also forces others to sit with their own interpretations, and that discomfort quietly increases respect. When you don't react impulsively, people measure their words more carefully around you. Over time, this teaches you something essential. Observation isn't passivity. Observation is clarity. Sometimes the most powerful response is not responding at all.
Habit 3. Stop overgiving what isn't appreciated. In many relationships, personal or professional, overgiving begins quietly. You help a little extra. You pick up small tasks. You support emotionally. You anticipate needs before they're even spoken. At first, it feels generous, but slowly it becomes your role. Psychologists call this the overfunctioning versus underfunctioning dynamic. When one person consistently does more, the other unconsciously adapts by doing less, not out of cruelty, but because the brain normalizes the pattern. That's why your effort often becomes invisible, not because it lacks value, but because it became expected. When you step back, when you stop automatically giving more than your share, you're not creating distance, you're restoring balance. You allow others to meet you halfway. You give them space to show effort. You reveal whether the connection was mutual or dependent on your overgiving. And most importantly, you remind yourself that respect isn't built on sacrifice, it's built on reciprocity. If you stopped doing extra, who would still stay?
Habit 4. Reinforce what's healthy, not what's harmful. Every relationship runs on reinforcement loops, patterns the brain repeats because they're rewarded with attention, validation, or emotional reaction. If someone raises their voice and gets an instant reaction, that reaction becomes reinforcement. If someone behaves dismissively and you chase them, the pattern strengthens. Not because you want it to, but because psychology responds to engagement. Breaking the loop doesn't require confrontation. Often, it only requires calm non-engagement. When unhealthy behavior is met with quiet boundaries instead of emotional activation, the brain registers a new message. This no longer works. At the same time, when kindness, respect, or cooperation is met with warmth and presence, those behaviors grow stronger. Behavioral science is simple. What you acknowledge grows. What you stop feeding slowly dissolves. You're not punishing. You're not teaching lessons. You're guiding the rhythm of the relationship. What if the behavior you keep reacting to is the very thing you're reinforcing? Habit 5. Protect your emotional world. Sharing emotions is healthy, but sharing them indiscriminately weakens boundaries. Psychology calls this emotional permeability, how easily your inner world spills into external interactions. People with high permeability connect deeply, but they also become emotionally exposed. Protecting your emotional world doesn't mean hiding feelings. It means being selective about where those feelings live. When certain fears, insecurities, or thoughts stay within trusted spaces or within yourself, you reduce emotional misinterpretation and unintended harm. This habit also gives your nervous system room to breathe. Not every emotion needs to be processed out loud. Not every feeling needs an immediate audience. Sometimes clarity comes from sitting with emotions first. Over time, people treat you with more steadiness because emotional boundaries signal psychological strength, not distance. What if not everyone deserves access to your inner world? Habit 6. Match their effort calmly. One of the most transformative social habits is reciprocity alignment. Matching the energy, communication, and commitment others show you without drama, without explanation. Most emotional exhaustion comes from giving far more than you receive. When you quietly adjust your effort to match theirs, relationships reveal their true structure. If they increase effort, you feel the shift. If they stay distant, the imbalance becomes obvious. If they value the connection, they move closer. If they don't, clarity replaces confusion. Matching effort isn't pulling away. It's restoring equilibrium. It allows participation without self-betrayal. It prevents resentment, the silent destroyer of relationships. Equilibrium isn't coldness. It's self-respect in motion. What would change if you stopped carrying connections alone? Habit 7. Leave when you feel unvalued. Few actions shift social dynamics more quietly and more powerfully than the willingness to walk away when your presence is consistently overlooked. In social psychology, this is called self-worth signaling. It communicates that your value doesn't depend on validation and that you won't remain in environments misaligned with your well-being. Walking away doesn't require anger. It doesn't require confrontation. Sometimes it's as quiet as not re-engaging, not repeating old patterns, not offering more chances than your mental health can afford. Ironically, absence creates cognitive contrast. The brain often understands value only when automatic access disappears. But walking away is never about teaching lessons. It's about honoring boundaries, even when no one is watching. For many people, this becomes the turning point in every future relationship. What if the respect you're seeking comes the moment you stop staying where you're unseen? Quiet habits don't make you distant, they make you clear. And clarity reshapes relationships. Not anger, not explanations, not confrontation. When your behavior aligns with your self-worth, people naturally adjust how they speak to you, how they treat you, and how they engage with you. So tell me, which of these 7 habits resonated with you the most? Drop it in the comments. And if this helped you see relationships differently, subscribe, because clarity changes everything.